Okay, so I'm going to get started here. I'm in the process of this long-term project. It's a writing project, and it's about curriculum design. And what I've been doing for the past month and a half is working mostly with these articles here. So I read through a whole bunch of articles on problem-based learning. I think it was about 16 of them so far. They're the ones that are marked here in the green, and the green indicates that I read through it and I wrote a literature note. And most of them I created concept-based notes as well. And in fact, I think all of the ones that are in green, I created concept-based notes. So where is all this living? Right now, the articles themselves are in Dev and Think as PDF files, and they're marked up and highlighted. And then the actual notes for them are in Obsidian in literature notes. So here, for instance, is Blackwell and Rosa 2018, and it's in the form of a literature note right now. And you could see here that it has a bunch of headers. Now, the headers, if you haven't created these before, the headers were not necessarily in the original article. The headers were my ways of organizing the themes and the ideas that were in the original article. And so now, once they're all in Obsidian in the literature note, then I could refer back to this original source, and you'll see here at the top, I could link directly to the original PDF file in Obsidian, and then I also have the DOI number so that I can go straight, if I wanted to the journal that it's in. And so what I'm in the process of doing now is, for the past several weeks, maybe even month, I would say, once I had the literature notes, I started taking each of these literature notes and turning them into concept-based notes, and that's what you see over here on the right-hand side of Obsidian. And it's the concept-based notes that, for me, is where the writing prep really starts to occur. I'm making sense of the articles as I'm writing the literature notes. That's a lot of work, and organizing them. But everything is contained in that literature note. And now as I create the concept-based notes, that's where the ideas really start to pull together. And I have information from all of those different articles that I read, plus anything else that I have read in the past that I have notes on. And so I'm at the very tail end of this set of, I think I said 16 articles. I'm on the last 3 or 4 of them. And so when you start off with this process, any header that you have in the literature note will likely become its own concept-based note, and you might not have any other information there. And the nice thing is that once you get started and you have your concept-based notes, I'm now at a point where most of what I'm reading in this set of articles, I have at least one concept-based note already from another article, then I can start to merge and organize the ideas. And so that's where I'm at right now. So I'm in the middle of this Blackwell and Rose's note. Actually not at the middle, kind of more towards the top, where I just transferred in this information about how when in problem-based learning, students don't necessarily learn as much in terms of breadth, but they retain more. They're pulling some of this evidence from prior studies. And so what I did with this is I pulled it into originally a note on concerns that people have, because there are sometimes concerns that people have around the whether or not they're covering content. And this is actually quite an important concept in terms of curriculum design, and the way that people work with curriculum is, to what extent are they covering topics. I'm less interested in the coverage here and more interested in the depth of going into various aspects of a curriculum, and in this case, a problem-based learning oriented curriculum where it's the problems that we're trying to address rather than a whole set of content. So it started off, I was starting off to think about covering in terms of concerns, but then you could see here that there is this trade-off between coverage and retention. So the other place where I have this note is over here, a note on relationship to knowledge coverage, which is broader. And here's where you see I have some notes that came from Hung 2019, and then a note from Blackwell and Rosa. I haven't transferred this in there yet, so actually let me do this now. So I'll grab this, copy it, and I'm going to paste it into down here. And the other thing that I do, you could see over here, when I put information in from a literature note into a concept-based note, I want to be able to trace it back to the original literature. So I'm just going to grab this here, Blackwell and Rose of 2018, and I'm going to paste it here next to the page number. And I'm pretty meticulous when I'm making the literature notes of keeping track of any verbatim quotes that I have the page number to make this process much easier. So now that I have the Blackwell and Roseth in here, along with the Hung 2019, the other place where I wanted this to go is under, this is called evidence right now. And because these are the early stages of the concept-based notes. So in this note, where it's just evidence of problem-based learning, what I'm mostly interested is impact of problem-based learning on learning. And what evidence is there so that I can refer to it when I'm making a case that perhaps we ought to have more problem-based learning in our curriculum. So here you can see evidence is, there's some evidence on self-directed learning. And then down here, I started to build out a category of retention of what is learned with this subtopic of students don't learn as much in terms of breadth, but retain more. And here again, I just pasted it so I have it here with a copy and paste. I'm going to paste this here and over here. So now I have this note that was originally in the literature notes. It's in 3 different places. Now, what happens with that once I'm organizing things later on? I'm not sure. I'm always kind of figuring these things out as I go along to determine what makes the most sense in terms of where a note goes and how many copies of it there are. So in this case, I'm not at that point yet. I'm sort of still transferring the last bits of literature notes into the concept-based notes, but I'm really at that cusp where I'm starting to change and morph the concept-based notes, mostly taking very large concept-based notes and turning them into either smaller concept-based notes that are more focused or maps of content, which are ways of organizing ideas that link out to multiple concept-based notes. So I'm pretty much satisfied with what I transferred from over here. So I'm going to scroll down here, and now I have this next bit from the original article of the Blackwell and Roseth 2018, and I haven't yet done anything with this. So let's see here. This is talking about pre-service music teachers are unconfident in problem solving, and when they're unconfident in problem solving, they resort to solutions that are not ideal. And if I remember, this was focused on problem-based learning in the context of instrumental lessons. When if you're not familiar with music education, one of the things that people who are learning to be music teachers do is they learn how to play all different kinds of instruments that they might teach in schools. And so this was an article on what happens when you integrate a problem-based approach as they are learning their secondary instruments, these instruments that they didn't know how to play before going into that class. And so when they're not confident in their problem-solving abilities, they'll turn to indirect strategies. And so in this case, it was the undergrads, trying to give solutions to someone who wasn't able to play an instrument well that weren't really directly related to the issue at hand. And they're making the case that this might have related to problem solving, not just content, not just knowledge of content. So what am I going to do with this? I think as I'm reading it and making sense of it, I want to pull this and actually pull this into the why problem-based learning. So I have a note on that over here. And in this case, the why is that if you engage people in problem-based learning, they will be able to possibly solve problems better. It's a little bit obvious, but I think it's important. So what do I have in here so far? Well, here I have why problem-based learning helps students encounter real-world problems, positive attitudes, motivation, resilience to challenges, retention, positive effect on skill development. And I actually don't have being able to problem solve, which I have in lots of other notes. So this relates directly to music ed. The interesting thing here, though, is in this project, I'm really thinking about how do you make sense of this more at the K-12 level, and a lot of the problem-based learning literature and music education is in the higher ed level. Not a big deal. It's just as I'm thinking about where I put these kinds of notes, what I think I'm going to do is I'm going to put it here for now, and we'll call this this is going to be a second level header to develop skills. And again, because right now I'm doing this transfer process and not an organization process, this is going to be this is going to turn out to be a pretty long note, and then I'll break it up over time if that seems appropriate. So again, I want to remember where this came from, because who knows what I'll remember or not remember. What I like about Obsidian is it does tend to pull up the most recent things that you were working with, and now that's in there. Okay, so let's move on to the next area here. I could probably put that in other spots, but for now I'm happy where it is. Okay, so types of problems in the Woodwinds Methods course. So it was a Woodwinds Methods course. This is, again, where future music teachers are learning how to play woodwind instruments, your flutes and your clarinets, things of that sort. And this is cool because this is showing how they situated the problems. So in this case, some of the problems were video examples. So where does this go? Well, this relates directly to how the problems would show up, but it also relates to music education. So let's say I wanted to think through problem-based learning in an instrumental methods course. We call them at the school where I teach at ASU labs. If I wanted to do that, I know that this article is focused on that. I would probably go straight to this article or this literature note. In this case, what I want to think about here is more broadly, not necessarily problem-based learning in instrumental methods courses. What I want to think about is just types of problems and how we might situate or present problems. So I have to first figure out, where is that? I know that I have notes on that. Do I remember what they're called? No. So I've already created my map of content as I've been creating all these concept-based notes, which has a set of, not all the concept-based notes that I have in problem-based learning, because I haven't been as meticulous in organizing that, but a lot of them. So I want to get into the area where I would say, like, oh, here are some ways that you could present the problems as live cases, as video examples, as written cases, so that I can extrapolate into designing problems in general. So where would that be? Let's see. I have, what is a problem? Goals, principles, evidence, characteristics, design considerations. It could be in design considerations. It could also be in sort of the teaching of it. So let's see if I can figure this out, because this is the part, right after I do all this transferring is when I'm going to really dig in and do some major organizing of these maps of content. So let's see here. I want to go into design. Yeah, let's go into the design considerations. This is like a larger note with a whole bunch of design considerations. So let's open this up. And my computer's a little laggy right now. So we have scenarios, construct challenging, provide document, provide repeat and pause, constrain. So this is more of like the design and not necessarily how do you present them. I think where I want to go is this facilitation, teaching facilitation strategy. So let's go into teaching strategies. It might be there. I might actually need to make a note on the format, but I think I have it somewhere. So this is still, again, like I said, I'm still in the early stages of where any of this is showing up. Let's see here. Developing, curating resources, modeling, probing, expanding. So this is once they're in it. So I need to find a note that I have on how I'm setting these things up. I know I also have problem types, but that's less of how they're presented, I think. Let's see. In terms of duration, where did I put this? So maybe what I should do I want to put this in design considerations? It's sort of like how they would be presented or types. Let's put them in types for now, and then I'll move them at some other point. So I have in terms of duration, in terms of complexity, Let's put format, like the format of the problem. Or like medium, the media of the problems. But we'll put format, like how it's presented. Okay, so now I'm going to go back into the Blackwell and Roseth. Let's see here. Video examples. I know that I have something on the use of video to present problems. So video examples. And then I'll break these up later on. Right now, again, I'm just focusing on getting the information out of the original source or the literature note and moving it into the concept-based notes. And then I'm going to spend a lot of time working through the concept-based notes and turning them into maps of content and so on and so forth. Live case examples. Yeah, this is much more specific to the specific context of the instrumental methods class. But I could see building this out in some way to make sense in other contexts. Blackwell and Roseth. So remember, what I've been for the past month doing this to all the different articles that I read and worked with. And it feels good to be getting towards the end of this part of the process. So let's paste this here, written cases. Again, I'm just going to copy and paste this here, Blackwell and Roseth. Is it a little tedious to do this process? It is. But you're learning as you're going. You're making sense and making meaning of the content that's in the original articles as you start to turn them into concept-based notes. Okay, so here are findings. This would be the kind of thing where my immediate thought is it goes into sort of the evidence of things that were found, but I could see these notes probably going into other places as well. So for instance, it could, here it increased teacher confidence. Perhaps I might say, oh, one of the positive aspects of problem-based learning is that it can increase students' confidence. But for now, I'm going to put these all in their evidence, and these are music specific. But I don't really. It's not that I don't care. To me, it doesn't matter as much about the specificity in terms of the domain of knowledge right now. So let's put this in increase of confidence. And when this says teacher confidence, what they actually are referring to is it's the students. These are pre-service music educators. So we might refer to them as teachers in this case because they were teaching their peers instruments in this study. You might refer to them as teachers. So they were students in the class, so this might apply to students in other classes. So we're going to keep it here right now instead of making it specific to music ed. Down here, changes in how they would approach teaching. So that goes back to the problem solving, right? It helped change their thinking regarding how they would approach problems with their own students. So ultimately, where I'm ending up with this is not necessarily the focus on teacher education, but how they might approach problems. So let's make it about, here I categorize it as changes in how teachers would approach teaching, which is true from this article. But I think I want to put changes in engaging in problem solving. And I'll think through that more to make sure that I think that it is accurate. So I'm going to retitle it here for the purposes of more making it more general. And then the nice thing is, let's say it's 3 months from now, and I'm like, what did I mean by this? I have the link right here. I can go right back to the original literature note where I have, I actually had a different header here. And then if I'm like, what was this even talking about? I could go back up to the top of my note and go right to the PDF file in my DevonThink or the original article in the online journal. So I think it's super important when you're doing any of this work to be able to go immediately right back to the original source, so you're not trying to figure out what it was that you were referring to, or you're not like 3 iterations of ideas out and unable to trace it back. So I know a lot of folks, when they're writing these notes, they say that when you're reading the articles, you should paraphrase as you create your literature note. And sometimes I do that, but I often want the exact verbatim quote, which is what all these are with their page number, so I can go back and find what was originally being discussed. And then also, since I'm ultimately going to be writing with this, to be able to cite them accurately. So sparking curiosity, I think, is super important for the work that I'm interested in. So one of the good benefits here was sparking curiosity. I could have just copied out and pasted it, but whatever. So here we go. We have this in here. I'm going to move this. And again, this note is all about sort of the impact. What I have here is evidence, so that I can make a distinction between, well, here's what we think this might do, or here are some perspectives on this, and here's where people actually did some research to find out what would happen. Motivation, I actually have a whole note on motivation. I'm not going to move this here now. I'm going to keep it in the evidence note, but I know, I'm making an internal note here that once I'm done transferring all these literature notes into concept-based notes, I'm going to come back into these concept-based notes, and then I know that I'll be moving this into a whole note that I have on motivation and problem-based learning. So let's keep doing this. It takes time to go through and transfer all this information and these ideas, but for me, it really pays off, because essentially you end up structuring some of what you're going to be writing about if it's a writing project. More comfortable seeking information. This is all really fantastic. I'm really happy with this article and with all the information that I'm grabbing here, because it makes a strong case for why we should have more problem-based learning in our programs and in our curriculum. And hopefully there's more of this coming out. There are several music education articles in higher ed where people have been engaging in problem-based learning. So this is one of that set. Might not work well for students disinterested in the topic or work. So that's a finding that's important to put here. And then that would also go into, I have a note over here called challenges and concerns. So it would eventually go in there. Again, I'm trying to keep on track right now for this period of work that I'm doing, where I'm very focused on moving the information from the literature note into this concept-based note, and then I'll go back to kind of do another run through the concept-based note that I made here and transfer it into other notes. So sometimes I'll deviate from the original task that I have for myself and kind of go off and start working in all the other concept-based notes. But for me right now, I want to stay focused on this. Okay, so students' perceived relationship between problem-based learning and real-life scenarios. This is like all over the place. Super important is the relationship between problem-based learning and things that happen in the real world. In this case, the real world in terms of what these people would be teaching. But when we're thinking about K-12, we can design problems that reflect what goes on in the real world. That doesn't necessarily need to mean a vocational or career orientation, although it could, but a closer relationship between what's going on in the music classroom or music program and what happens in the real world, things that are happening outside of the classroom. And so I have tons of notes that relate to that idea. And in fact, the whole reason I'm engaging in this thinking around problem-based learning is because if you were to go back and watch the video that I did, I think a month and a half ago, when I was first starting the sabbatical project, I was looking at situated learning and embodied learning and ways that we can have our programs reflect more of what goes on in the world outside of the programs. And one of the approaches towards that is problem-based learning, which is what I've been focusing on this month. Okay. So we're now in the part of this literature that's dealing with challenges with implementation. So this will go for now into challenges, but again, I have notes on facilitation. So not only will these notes inform challenges, but they will inform how might we facilitate, how might we think about facilitating problem-based learning. So in this case, facilitating problem-based learning can feel unfocused or haphazard or unstructured. So I'm just going to grab this as a whole, and then I can break this down into more specific ideas, again, once I go back into this note. So let's see if I have anything on this here. So far the concerns are, or actually I want to go into challenges here. So far the challenges that we need, the issues of time. So that's a whole note. You can see I've embedded it here. Teaching responsibilities and workloads. Students might have difficulties with problem-based learning when unaided. And this is, it's the facilitation, and it can feel unfocused. This is, I think, probably more common for folks who are, I don't want to say less experienced at working in these spaces, but maybe more comfortable working in sort of highly structured and sequenced approaches. Yeah, it could feel really unstructured and loosey-goosey when you don't know exactly what's going to be happening from moment to moment or class to class. I love that kind of environment, but I know a lot of people are discomforted by it, and it's not that they're like against it. It's just takes some time to get used to that and figure out the skills involved with that. So that's something to keep in mind for people who want to integrate problem-based learning into their music programs or any other kinds of programs. Okay, so the next idea here is that it was often felt that there was not enough time to do everything that was desired. This is a good example for me, just meta here, of the benefit of once you have multiple literature notes transferred into concept-based notes. I'm going to copy this whole thing. Instead of creating a whole new concept-based note on this, we just saw a second ago that I have a whole note on problem-based learning and time. So now I can go in there, and what used to be like one note, oh, this is, yeah, so you can see here, the first time I created this note was September 19th. So now we're on October 4th, and I'm still adding to it. So the amount of time needed could be a challenge. These are typical time frames here, so I want to put, I need to put this in editing mode here, and I'm going to put this right here, and then again, eventually I'll streamline all of this. I'll make this right now a one header. And again, I'm going to link back to the original source of this literature note. I'm surprised that this hasn't showed up in my sort of recent, when I first open up a link here. Okay, let's go back here. Led to many student questions. What was the overarching challenges? That's kind of funny that that's considered a challenge. All right, let's see here. Led to many student questions. Is this a challenge? Facilitators had to develop a system. Okay. So they needed to develop a system for keeping track of questions and a way of thinking through relevant and not relevant questions. I'll put this in challenge right now, but I would also want to put this in the benefits of. I mean, I think it's great that a curricular approach and pedagogical approach leads to people asking more questions. And here they're talking about a question box as a way of sort of facilitating or mediating or moderating the question process. And I know that I have another note from other literature on a question guide to help with that. So again, this goes into lots of different spaces. So led to many student questions. We'll put it here for now, but this is, I guess, less of a, oh, this doesn't go here. Let's undo that. This goes back into challenges, which I think is, yes, I'm acknowledging that it is a challenge, but I want to put this in lots of other places and think through this more, because I love the fact that this led to many student questions. And so here, we're going to put this here for now. Sometimes I'll make a note to myself, like, go back and check the specific thing. But I know that in the next day or two, I'm going to be finished with transferring all of these literature notes into concept-based notes, because I only have, I think, 3 more after this. And so my next thing to do is I'm going to go through all of these concept-based notes and organize them and streamline them. So let's see here. Tensions between designing ill-structured problems and more structured problems. Okay. So this is sort of at the crux of the curricular stuff. So students are more successful with more guidance and structure, possibly work towards ill-structured problems. So yeah, this was this idea that maybe work starting off, if students haven't worked with ill-structured problems, perhaps start with more structured and then work their way towards ill-structured as they become more successful, more confident, they develop some of those skills. So we'll put this in challenges, and then of course this will show up. I have notes on ill-structured problems, well-structured problems. So again, when I do all the second layer of work, when I'm working with the concept-based notes, I'll certainly be going back and putting this in there. We'll make this a level 1 header. Yeah, that's going to be something for people to really think through is, how do you figure out what to start with? What's the degree of structuredness? And that is a word in this kind of line of work. What's the degree of structuredness of the problems that you start students off with? And how do you build up to ill-structured problems, which can, be challenging, quite challenging, both for students and for teachers, particularly if it's new to a classroom. Okay. Oh, what happened? Here it is. All right, my Blackwell and Roseth, still working through it. I'm getting towards the end here, which feels kind of nice. A move towards ill-structured problems for more real-world connections, right? So isn't this this is the interesting tension for me, is that it may be easier to move through those well-structured problems, but sometimes it's the ill-structured problems, the ones that are more complex, the ones that don't have as clean-cut answers, that relate more to what happens in the real world. So it's this interesting curricular tension that I think for teachers who are going to work with this, okay, what is this here? This is a note that I made when I was moving this in. So what I do when I'm making my literature notes or kind of any notes in my system is when I want to make just a very clear distinction between something that I grabbed from the literature and my own thinking, I put it with these sort of double slashes and italics. And then this eventually sometimes becomes part of my writing. So the issue might be less of the structure or more of an issue. Okay. So what I was thinking is if students were having more difficulty with ill-structured problems, perhaps the issue is, and I don't know because I haven't spoken to Blackwell and Roseth yet. Maybe I'll speak with them. But some of the times it's not just the structuredness of the problem, it's the degree and type of scaffolding that we provide. And so the teacher definitely plays an important role in all this. So where am I? We're move towards more ill-structured problems for more real-world connections. So this is less of a challenge and more of a sort of curricular relationship between ill-structured problems and curriculum. So let's move out of the challenge. Let me just read through this a little bit more. Yeah, through additional research, teacher educators might develop more effective approaches for scaffolding, maximizing learning benefits while minimizing perceptions of haphazardness. Right. And I think that often happens when students are either comfortable or have a lot of experience with highly structured environments. When they move into an environment that's a little less structured, it could feel like it's haphazard or that like there's no plan in place. So, okay, so where's this going to go? This is one of those moments where I need to go back and take a look at like, what are all my notes that I have on this? So you could see here that I have all these different notes, and I'm going to go to my map of content. And the map of content, again, has a guide of the many different notes that I have on problem-based learning so far. It's definitely not all of them because I still need to come back and add some. But I want to go back to problem-based learning and curricular issues and see what I have. Okay, so I have misaligned curriculum, relationship to knowledge coverage, what content should I learn, organizing learning around solving problems in time. And so I don't yet have a note in this area on ill-structuredness and real-world connections, but I'm going to, do I have ill-structured open here yet? Let's take a look real quick at what I have for my ill-structured notes. So I'm going in my search, ill-structured problems. You could see I'm going to open this up. What are ill-structured problems? Unclear goals. These are descriptions of ill-structured problems. more complex and more difficult to solve. Why engage with them? And examples. Okay, so maybe it will go there. But I also have a note on real world problems that I remember that. So I'm going to go into real world. Okay, let's see here. I have problem solving world outside a music program, connecting problem-based learning to real life contexts, designing activities from real world inspirations. Let's go into this note. Yeah, if problems are too utilitarian, I have a note on that. This is sort of not that. Open binary real world. So it's kind of like its own. Let's make it its own note. Okay, so that's what we're going to do. We're going to make it its own note. So the process I have for this is I have like a button I can press on my stream deck right here. I'm not going to go into the details of what this is doing right yet, but I am opening up a template, and I'm going to call this moving to more problems for more real world connections. And this is, I need to think of where this is going to go as I'm building it out. So this is metadata. I always like to put a bunch of metadata in here. I'm making all these notes for this project. Have a curriculum tag. Have a sip of my tea. The type is a concept. I like to make note of the day. I do have a plugin that has all the information of when the note was created and when it was last modified, but I like to have it in this metadata here. This is called the properties if you're not used to seeing this. Okay, what's the concept? I'm going to skip that for now. Skip the the MOC. I'm just going to put the note in here. And then I want to kind of go through here for a moment. First, authors moved more systematically toward ill-structured problems. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to make some links here. So ill-structured problems is going to link to the note on ill-structured problems. More effective approaches for scaffolding. And I'm going to link to my note on scaffolding. I have a map of content because I have so many notes on scaffolding. Okay, and then problem-based learning. I have a note on problem-based learning. That's another map of content. Okay, online partnerships with schools using would be fruitful. That's kind of a cool idea. And online learning. Yeah, that's cool. Okay, so I'm not going to deal with that stuff right now. I am going to link this back to the original source, Blackwell and Roseth. And let's see here. I'm going to moving to more ill-structured problems for more real-world connections in the map of content, so I don't lose this note in the massive amount of notes that I have. This is a curricular issue. It's both a pedagogical issue and a curricular issue for me. So I'm going to put it here. And then for facilitation, let's go back into teaching strategies here. So let's see here. Renewing, I almost want to have a note that's more of a meta note on how you moving through sort of different degrees of complexity. And so I think I have to start moving multiple notes together, and for me that's not the thing to do right at this moment. So I am going to put it here as its own note, but then over time I'm going to build out that note so it encompasses additional thinking around how do we move through different degrees of complexity in problem-based learning. So where do I want to put this? Not up here. Hmm. Hmm. It's a little bit more meta, right? I'm going to put it here at the top, actually. Because this is like more overarching. Oh, that's not what I wanted to do. I wanted to link to the note. Okay, so I'm satisfied with that right now. All right. This feels good. I went through this. Okay, before I leave this note, one thing I like to do, this is, again, just sort of like management of the process. I do like to go back into the original literature note, and I'm going to link to all the related concept-based notes. And I'll the reason I do this, so let's see here, benefits. This is why. The reason for doing this is that sometimes I'll be in the literature note. Let's say I'm teaching a class where I'm using this study, and I have my literature note out. What this allows me to do is, instead of only focusing on what was in this study, I can go to any of these concept-based notes and find all kinds of related information. So it makes it sort of like, add value is not necessarily the right phrase for it. It makes it more connected. It makes it easier for me to connect it to all the other related literature. So why problem-based learning? Well, that's obvious. That just goes into why. Where is it here? Why? Okay. I'm going to take a look over here for a second. Okay, so long-term impact. This goes into the evidence area for now. And then eventually this might change. So this is evidence. I'm going to put types of problems. This I put into, what did we call it here? It was problem types. I have a feeling that these are all eventually going to be their own concept-based notes. Findings, okay, this was evidence. Increased teacher confidence. Again, these will likely all be their own concept-based notes eventually. Challenges goes into challenges. There we go. Could feel unfocused. Okay, and then over here, the tensions, that's in the challenges. And then this is the one where I made it its own note and moved towards more ill-structured problems for more real-world connections. Let's see, that's this one. Okay, so now I've done all the work in taking this literature note and turning it into concept-based notes. If you go down to the bottom here, this is another plugin. I can't remember what this one is called right off the top of my head. But what it does is it shows me any of the notes that are out in my vault that link to this note. So it helps with finding connections. That's also available on the side view, but I don't need to do that right now. Okay, the other bit of meta information I'm going to do, again, this is sort of like just management, is I'm going to change the status. Now I processed the concept-based notes. I don't need to turn it into concept notes anymore. I have this all done. And then the very last management thing I'm going to do is, let me see if I could show you on the screen. Let's see how I want to do this. I need to go into, I think it's this. Let's see if this works. There we go. Okay, so what you're looking at here is my management of this whole project. This is something I only for the first time did this during the sabbatical project. I've never used, this is, I think it's called the the projects plugin. Yeah, I think it's called projects plugin. And what we're looking at here is it creates a database essentially of whatever you want it to be. You design a database. So what I've used is, instead of using my typical task management application, which I use pretty much OmniFocus for all of that, I wanted to stay hyper-focused in this project, and I wanted to leverage the ability to interlink back and forth and have everything at my fingertips in Obsidian. So what I've been doing is keeping track of all the things that I need to do in Obsidian in this project's file. And I find it really handy. So I'm going to go into the Blackwell and Roseth article. Here it is. I'm going to open it up. And now I'm going to change the status on this, because I have the original literature note where I had some status signifiers, and here I have a management file, 2 separate files. Next steps, it's done. So it's completed. I might want to go back in here to do something, so I'm just going to leave it as completed instead of getting rid of it. And you could see now it shows up as completed in my database. So these are the ones you could see. I told myself that I wanted to get this done. On September 11th is when I said do this, and then I got it done. I don't keep track of the day that I finished it, but I now have that finished. So I think that's a good place to wrap things up for today. I'm going to keep on working on these concept-based notes. You could check out my other videos on using Obsidian for research, for academic work. You could check out other videos related to this specific project, whether it's problem-based learning, curriculum, or just sort of my journey as I'm sort of working on this writing project, research project in public, this sort of learning in public idea, learning in public, writing in public, trying things in public, and also practicing my live streaming. So you can give me suggestions of how I could do that better, because I am interested in improving my live streaming chops and my live Obsidian research chops. So thanks for joining me, and I'll see you around next time. Have a good one.